You're listening to Gearing Up, an Everyday Carry podcast, a show that's made for the community, featuring interviews with makers, creators, and members of the community, and discussions on current trends in the industry. Follow along as we talk about life, gear, hobbies, and more. And be sure to stay tuned for new episodes every week. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Gearing Up. This is the Everyday Carry podcast where we talk about everyday carry stuff, and usually I'm joined by a guest. Today is no different. Today, I have a guest that I am super excited to chat with. The man, the myth, the legend, my friend, someone that I look up to. Today, we are joined by Casey Lynch. Casey, what's going on, man?
Greg, how you doing? Boy, that was a really kind and too kind introduction. Way too kind. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Listen, you are held to such a high regard in the community, and I think there's a few reasons why. Number one, you have an incredible product, and we'll get into the products and the stuff you make and all that stuff. But you make an incredible product. You have an incredible warranty. You are just an incredible guy, but at the same time, you're kind of quiet. You aren't super out there in terms of posting and stuff like that, and so I don't know, man. I was excited to get to know you when we first started chatting, and so it's even more exciting to have you on. And so I appreciate you taking some time out to chat with me today.
Yeah, no, thanks for giving me the opportunity, Greg. I'm nervous, which I think we had talked about briefly. This is really out of my wheelhouse and comfort zone. So
Sure.
I appreciate I appreciate you bearing with me, and thanks for reaching out. And congratulations, you're almost at 100 episodes. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal.
Yeah, we're we're trucking along. It was kind of a no brainer to reach out to you, man. Just in terms of your work and who you are and your personality and your interaction within the community, it made sense to bring you on and want to chat with you. And it was sort of we're sort of coming full circle. I was looking at the post this morning, and it was from May of 2019, where I did like a little blog post about you. And I remember reaching out to you and sending you an email and giving you a bunch of questions, and we went back and forth for a little bit. You were just so gracious with your answers and your time and all of that stuff. And I put that in my maker series, and that was really sort of, if I'm going to credit anything with what has helped this podcast succeed, it was the maker series, and it was introducing makers to folks in the community. And you were the one that sort of finished out that series. You were the last post that I made. Kind of just telling your story and a little bit about you. So again, it's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. I wanted to kind of touch back on, and again, one of the things I set out to do was introduce and kind of bring makers in and give you guys a chance to talk. So I'm babbling, I'm rambling. Let's get to Casey Lynch, Lynch Northwest, and the designs, the products, all of that stuff, the stuff that people came to listen to. They don't want to listen to me talk. um, so I think anybody listening knows what your products are, right? The clips, the pry bars, all of that stuff. I want to go a little bit before that. I want to talk about your background. So before knives and everyday carry and pry bars and clips, like what tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, I went to college, um, and I was pursuing art, so I actually have an art degree, and that's what I
Okay.
really wanted to do. And so I had delusions of grandeur. I thought I'm gonna graduate and start painting, and people are gonna be throwing money at me, and that's not how it works. And so that didn't come to fruition. And I tried so hard and um, really worked at it and spent time, and it just wouldn't wouldn't happen. And that's life too, right? I mean, you have these plans and these big ideas, and sometimes it just doesn't click for whatever reason. And it could be a lot of reasons. Maybe I'm just not good enough, or maybe I am trying to hit the wrong demographic, or maybe the place
Right.
I live just isn't a good fit for what I'm doing. Who knows? Could have been any of those things or a combination. So, but I always love design and art, and um, and so I think that's kind of what got me into what I'm doing. Is that's what really excites me, is the design side, and it's fun to make stuff, and it's I love interacting with people, and whether it's email or phone, and I've made some great friends, you included. A lot of people that I consider good friends, and that's just such a cool part of this thing. Which I think everybody that you talk to, I think will say the same thing and has said the same thing, that the community is really what
Yeah.
makes the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you I believe you said you had delusions of grandeur, right?
Yeah.
Um, so art isn't panning out. I mean, so what professionally, what route did you start to go when being the painter wasn't panning out?
So I worked most of my, if you want to call it, professional career or working career, I was in construction. So that was what paid the bills. And then
Right.
I would paint on the side, and I'd have little art shows here and there, and stuff would sell, but it wasn't enough really to provide for my family. And
Yeah.
and it's hard to give up those dreams. I That's what I wanted to do since I was a kid, and so you have in your head that that's who you're going to be, and then you come to this realization that's not who I am, or that's not the path that's going to be my life. And so
Hmm.
it was a pretty discouraging time, honestly, to kind of come to that realization, and because you have to be honest with yourself, right? You don't want to beat your head against a wall. So one Christmas, my dad gave me a buck pocket knife, and I never really carried knives before, and that was, gosh, maybe 10 years ago, I guess. And
Uh-huh.
Buck is right in our backyard. The factory's only, from where I live, a half hour away.
Wow.
And so that, of course, led down the rabbit trail of, love this little knife. And so I started looking at forums, and
Yeah.
then you start reading about brands and other knives and what people think. And I heard you and Tom Medvedich talk about it, where I remember $50 for a knife. That's crazy. And then $100 for a knife, that doesn't sound so terrible. $400 for Chris Reeve, I could probably get a couple of those.
It's
So
all relative, right?
yeah, it's that progression where I'll people will ask me what I do for a living, and I'll kind of try to explain it, but they don't really understand just because it doesn't make sense, unless you're kind
Yeah.
of in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I'm intrigued. So you start going down the rabbit hole, and you find sort of this interest, and when what I'm not necessarily interested in when, but what was it that made you take the leap from, hey, this is a cool hobby, to, hey, I'm going to take some of this design language that I love and really have a passion for, and I want to start creating and making with my hands. And I mean, what caused that leap?
So I was reading forums, and my first quote unquote nice knife was a PM2,
Hmm.
which is still my all time favorite knife. I just think the
Classic,
design
yeah.
is pretty much perfect. And so I was on some forums, and I saw deep carry clips, and I thought, oh, I gotta have one of those. And it was, I don't know if you remember, STR was the guy who was making them. I don't think he's around anymore, but I really wanted one. But the price tag was $40, and at the
Hmm.
time, $40 was a lot of money. And so I thought, I don't know if I can justify that purchase. I wonder if I can figure out how to make something like that.
Yeah.
And so I started doing some sketches, and I didn't have any metalworking experience, any knowledge, anything. So it was just a lot of trial and error, figuring it out, making mistakes, help from people who knew what they were doing, who were gracious enough to give me some advice or give me some time. And that's really all it's been, is tons of mistakes, tons of failed projects, and just kind of progressing to figuring out how to do certain things. And the key really has been other people helping me along. I couldn't have
Right.
figured any of this stuff out without serious help from people who are gracious enough to lend their time and expertise. And that's not a small thing because a lot of these people have decades of experience, and when somebody
Yeah.
like that is willing to share with you, man, that makes all the difference between failure and success, really. So that's been it, really. It's been, and it was a combination of that. So I figured it out and started selling them on Blade forums,
Uh-huh.
and some of those guys just said, "I'm going to give this guy a shot," and kind of blindly sent me money, and I'd sell three or four, and then people seemed to like them, so then there'd be a few more, and it was just really, really cool because, and I'll always be grateful and in debt to those guys because they didn't know who I was. They didn't know if they
Yeah.
were going to get something awful or nothing in the mail,
Right.
but they were willing to take a risk, and that's really that was the I would say that was the biggest that was the turning point when the guys on Blade forums were willing to give me a shot, and then the second biggest thing was Blade HQ reaching out to me a
Yeah.
few years ago. That was really kind of what made it seem like, oh, I could maybe do this and make a living at it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question is like when did it click that hey, this is a thing? Because I've talked to a few other makers that like you, they just kind of hey, I wonder if I can do this. I like it, but I want to see if I can do it for myself or maybe do something that I design and then there's a little interest and there's a little interest and it grows and grows and grows. And then all of a sudden, you have, like I think of like John Brown throwing up some Scoopy loops and they sell out immediately, right?
Mhm. Yep, yep.
And that, boom, it clicks. So that was going to be my next question is when did it click? So was it the forums gaining traction or was it really like Blade HQ reaching out and then you're like, oh wow, this is really a thing.
It was kind of a combination of those 2 things. So, it was the guys on the forum who were really, really gracious because I would have 30 or 40,
Mm-hmm.
and when they'd be gone, it might be a month or 2 months before I could get the next batch done because at that point in time, all of the making process was really, really rudimentary. Plus, I was working full time and I have a family, so kind
Yeah.
of trying to make it all work. And the reality of what should have happened was guys should have just gave up on me, and gone to the next maker because I wasn't getting product out the door. But they were just super patient and really, really kind, and so they'd give me, I my ordering process back then was people would find my email because I didn't have a website or anything and email me, and I'd almost always say I don't have any, but I'll get back to you when I have some made. And so I'd print out their email, and as
Mm-hmm.
soon as I'd have some made, I'd email them back. And really, a month later or whatever it was, guys should have emailed me in return and said, "Ah, I found another one. Thanks, anyways." But they almost always said, "Okay, I'm sending you money." And so
Yeah. Send it on.
yeah, it was really, really encouraging that guys were willing to wait for stuff. And it wasn't like it was some magnificent piece of art. It was just a little part that they were going to put on their knife, and
Yeah.
it was just I don't know.
Well,
The community's been just so cool, the whole process, and just so supportive. It's been awesome.
well, and I think that speaks to the quality of the design, the efficiency of the design, and you think about um listen, I'll get off my McBee soapbox one day for anybody listening that's still annoyed hearing about it. But I love my McBee, but there is a deal breaker on it. I hated the factory clip. Now McNee has put out some different clips, and so that was amazing. So, but my point being, there are some knives that are great that have deal breaker clips. I'm
Mhm.
not a fan of the wire clip. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm on the hate side. And so when you can take, my one complaint about a knife and you can fix it with a really well designed, solid clip. I mean, and it's again, it's. I love that your clips are titanium. I love that they're so they don't have rough edges. They don't create additional hot spots. Like again, that I feel like that speaks to that willingness for people to wait or a company like Blade HQ reaching out just speaks to the quality of the design. So it makes sense to me. I think there are, and like you said, it's just this one little piece of a knife. It's not like it's a, full dress custom you waited 6 months on the books for, right? It's just a clip. But think about it from the utility perspective and the usability and the carryability perspective. Like, it makes a big difference. So I think it's worth it. Um,
Thanks, thanks.
so I want to talk about um, some of your inspiration. So, I think when you look at your line and you look at, like, I can look at any of your clips completely at random and I can say, oh, that's a Casey clip. That's for sure. That's got his style. I can look at your pry bars, same thing. Like, so, there's sort of this consistent design language. So maybe not one specific element, but is there anything that sticks out inspiration wise to you, or anything you could cite for inspiration?
Yeah, I love really clean design, and so, let me think here. I love, Frank Lloyd Wright, which is obviously kind of outside the genre, but
Mm-hmm.
just really clean, very purposeful design. I've always been when I was painting, my artistic style was modeled after illustrators from around the turn of the century. So it wasn't I wasn't trying to be fancy or say
Mm-hmm.
something revolutionary. It's just, here's kind of what I think on a canvas, or here's who I am put on a canvas.
Sure.
And so kind of trying to do the same thing with the parts, make them usable, but also attractive, and
Yeah.
hopefully just kind of fun to play with and mess around with. I guess trying to find that balance between being practical and being aesthetically pleasing, I guess, which I think
Sure.
almost everybody who's making stuff is trying to do that same thing. It's just, that's one of the cool things about this community is everybody has their own take on it. And
Yeah.
so there's tons of guys that don't like my stuff because they don't like my style or my aesthetic, but there's another guy down here who's making something similar that they love, and that's what's so fun about it is if you spend time browsing and researching and looking at Instagram or whatever, you're gonna find something you like. And that's
Yeah.
the mind-boggling thing to me is I'll stumble across some maker who's nobody really knows about. I'll just think, "Man, this guy's insane. This is so good." And so it's just really a matter of kinda getting a break. I mean, that's what happened to me. I just got some breaks.
Yeah.
Um, and there's guys out there who just haven't gotten breaks, and I hope that they do because there's some really, really talented, awesome people out there making really cool stuff.
Oh, absolutely, man. I was having a conversation, and I don't know in the order this is going to air versus them, but Novel Carry, the shop that just they didn't just open up, but Novel Carry is a shop that sells all kinds of EDC gear, and they've created this sort of maker marketplace where as a vendor you can
Mhm.
jump on and just sell your stuff. And when we were
Yep.
talking about that idea of like just a platform, right, where makers can stand out. So and to your point, brings another question, like, are there any folks in the community, individual accounts, makers, brands, whatever, that are catching your attention?
Yeah, I wish I would have taken some more notes because I'm not super good, off the cuff, but I love Jared Osser's stuff. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
his
Mm-hmm.
designs just appeal to me.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just something about, and it's funny because if you look at slip joints, the differences between a maker and another are pretty subtle. You have
Mm-hmm.
design parameters that they're all staying inside of for the most part, but it's just those really small differences. And I know you agree with this, but from one maker to another, this guy's okay. This guy, I just have to have one. And
Yeah.
a lot of times it's just a millimeter here, maybe a different color here,
Yeah.
just the shape of the blade, which is super subtle and almost imperceptible. But there's just some guys like Jared, and I don't know him. I've never talked to him,
Mm-hmm.
um, but they just speak to you. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
see.
well, and I was gonna say, you almost feel like you know him.
Yeah.
There's so much that as a creator and artist you pour into your design, right? And
Mhm.
sharing your work as much as you do as a maker in the community. Yeah, I mean, I don't know Jared, but I know his work, and his work speaks for itself. And
Yep.
just like I said about your lineup, I can point one of his out in a heartbeat just because of what he pours into his designs.
Yeah. Yeah, just phenomenal, um, I guess, aesthetic feel, just kinda
Hmm.
knowing, here's where this curve should end, here's how long I'm gonna make this specific part of the knife, here's the color way I'm gonna go with, and that is something that I think, at least in my opinion, you kind of either have innately or you don't,
Yeah,
and
I was just thinking that same thing. I was like, some people have it and some people don't.
yeah, and that's not to say that, but that's my personal opinion because there's lots of makers that I just don't like what they do. Not to say that they
Hmm.
don't do great work, it just doesn't speak to me, but it speaks to
Sure.
other people. There's other people who
Yeah.
love what these guys are doing, and, so that's the weird part about design is there's things that I think, "Oh my word, that is
Yeah.
horrible," but guys love it.
Well, it goes back to what you said about, that's one of the great things about the community is there is so much diversity and
Yep,
so many different takes on the same topic, right? Where
right.
there's some room for flexibility and interpretation. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, I'm with you 100% there. So I want to switch gears a little bit. And I want to talk about your lineup. So you are, undoubtedly known for your clips, your deep carry pocket clips. Um, probably most popularly Spider Co. And then obviously in the last, it seems like in the last 6 months to a year, you have, and correct my timeline if I'm wrong, but you've really grown the lineup. There's a lot of Benchmade offerings, CRK, um, and feel free to throw any others out there that I'm skipping, but you've really blown up the lineup of clips. I mean, was obviously I assume that as the business grows, that's the intention. But do you have any other models or brands or anybody you in particular you're working on you want to share?
Yeah, so there's a few Spyderco models that I don't have designs for. The Shaman is a big one,
Hmm.
and that's really been frustrating to me is not getting designs out as quickly as I should. And that's again, guys have been really patient,
Hmm.
willing to wait, but that's been a really hard thing as I try to scale up and grow a little bit is getting more designs out there. But the Shaman is one. I'd like to do some more ZT designs,
Hmm.
so I'm working on some ZT clips for some of, and their Spyderco is so unique in that so many of their models say share the same hole pattern, and so
Hmm.
you can have one part that goes across a wide spectrum of models. Where ZT is a little bit different, is they have so many hole patterns based
Yeah.
on the model, so it's a little more difficult to get parts out for those guys. But ZT, I really like what they're doing, and um, man, I have my to-do list that's a mile long for some other brands.
Yeah.
You know, Strider guys request Strider clips a lot, so I'd like to do
Yeah.
one for them. Hinder is the same thing, and the thing with all these brands is, for the most part, their clips are awesome. They're
Yeah.
just awesome. So guys, I'll get emails sometimes. The guys will say, "So, are your clips better?" And I have to say, they're really not. They're just different. It's a you know I'm making something that's just a little different if you want to deeper carry or if you just want to personalize what you're doing. But there's a few brands out there that the clips are not awesome, but I would say for the most part they're great. So what I'm doing is just a different take on, something that's already really good.
Sure.
I don't know. Did that
So
answer your question? I guess so.
yeah.
ZT, new Spyderco models, Hinder, those are probably at the top of the list, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And and to the folks listening that have the random one off with the weird clip, like, it obviously it doesn't make sense for you to make a custom design clip for, that one random knife that nobody buys. I'm looking at you, McP. Um, but it doesn't make sense to make a clip and pour a lot of work and time into it when it's not as popular of a knife. So obviously you've got to make those decisions and
Mhm.
prioritize one over another. And I think you've really hit kind of the core audience, and that's, I think, part of the reason why you've seen the growth that you've seen is you've obviously, connected a crazy good design, really great design language, and the right knives. I think you referenced having a PM2, and that, like, cool, you do that one, you're good. Like, that's a popular enough knife, um so moving outside of clips, I don't know if I found you through clips or pry bars first. I can't remember. Um, but you also have a series of pry bars, and I won't get into. There's some folks that I've had debates with about the usability of a pry bar,
Sure.
and I think
Yeah.
there's people that love them and people that just don't see the utility in them. And I fall
Yep.
on the side of loving
Absolutely.
them. I
For
absolutely love pry bars, um, and I use the heck out of them. I've beaten this thing up. Um, so you've got the V1, the V2, the V3, and they all sort of have their own different designs, but they all share that same Casey Lynch design language. And then you recently came out with a new model. Do you want to talk a little bit about the new model that you just released?
Yeah, so the reason that I did that one, it's actually quite a bit bigger than the other ones. I think it's 2 inches longer than the longest of the original
Right.
series, and I was really surprised. I'd get a lot of emails from guys in law enforcement or the military who would say that they'd used it on the job to pry something open or to do something while they were at work, and I just thought, "Wow, that is crazy
Mm-hmm.
that they're actually using it while they're deployed or while they're on shift, if they're a police officer."
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, maybe a little bit bigger one would be a little more practical for those guys. So
Sure.
it's probably not a good one if a good design if you are just gonna be scraping paint off of something, or you use it to open. It won't open a bottle, which the other ones will, which I think is what a lot of guys use them for. So it's more of a kind of heavy duty one. It's
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit thicker, so it's a little more stout, and probably overall it's probably less practical. I mean, you can only do a few certain things with it, but for guys who use it on the job, I thought, or construction even. I did a
Yeah.
lot of construction, so hopefully it's a kind of a practical solution to some problems if you just need something in your pocket to wedge something open or pry something apart or whatever.
Yeah, and when I first saw it, of course, someone says, "Well, Casey's got a new design." That's exciting, and so I saw it. I prefer the V2. It's, I think, the shorter of all of them.
Yeah,
Am I
yeah,
correct? So it's
yep,
the smaller one.
absolutely. Mhm.
It to me, it's reminiscent of like the size of like a cadet, maybe a little bit larger.
Yeah.
Um, and I know Tom's a big fan of it too.
Mhm.
Um, but when I saw this, I thought, "What?" And listen, I'm going to be honest. I was like, "What is Casey thinking? Like, this is huge." I thought,
Right.
"What is this? This is crazy." And then I saw people just eating it up, and I was like, "Okay, so maybe obviously it's not for me, but there's got to be some practical use for it." And now hearing that explanation and that mindset of sort of your intended audience, that makes so much sense, right? And again, having someone that's, law enforcement or military, and obviously the practicality of a bottle opener is pretty much zero, but again, having that pry tool or something like that, I absolutely 100% see it now. So it makes so much sense.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. That's the thing, like you said, with pry bars is there's guys who really like them, and then there's a lot of people who say, "Why would you spend?" That's just you could do the same thing with the screwdriver. In fact, a friend of mine stopped by the shop, and I hadn't seen him in a while, and so he's saying, "No, show me what you're doing." And so I'm showing him, and he's looking at him, and he says, "You sell these? People buy these?" And this is a guy who works with his hands. He does construction, but
Yeah.
it was just hilarious because he said, "Are you serious? People pay you money for these things?"
Yes. Listen, we go all day talking about some of the practicalities and impracticalities that are found in everyday carry stuff, but
Mhm.
the fact of the matter is, it's so the reason I like the V2 or any of your line, number one, it's a pry bar with a clip. and that seems to be a rare breed in the pry bar field. And I think that that's one of the reasons why they're not always the most fun to carry. I've got other pry bars, and I don't carry them as much because they don't have a clip.
Mm,
Um, but at the same time, I find myself using, like, removing staples. If I'm breaking down cardboard, I'm not going
mm,
to use the tip of my knife to pull out some of these staples.
right.
Um, and again, this is clipped on me. I've got it. It's easy to use. So there's, and I work with my camera a lot for my day job, and I'm on and off a tripod all the time. And sometimes I want the mounting plate on, sometimes I don't. And so it's nice to have something that I can sub as a flathead when I
Mm.
don't want to use my knife, right? And so that's my justification for it. But anybody else, again, feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you use it for. But I think they're fantastic, and I'm excited to see the line continue to grow, and those different practical use cases sort of being represented. So my hats off to you. I absolutely love it.
Well, thanks, Greg. I appreciate that. The reason I actually started doing them was I'd broken one too many tips off my knives, and that
Hmm.
is such a heart dropping moment when you have this knife that you just love, and you think, okay, I'm gonna pry the lid off this paint can. I'll be really
Oh
careful, and I'm sure it'll be fine. And then,
God.
you snap that tip off, and your heart just sinks.
Yep. Oh,
That
it's
was
the worst.
Yeah. So that was kind of the reason for it. And, too, I mean, my my big goal is I'm working on design for a folder. And so
Hmm.
kind of being able to kind of refine or practice or however you want to put it, figure out how am I going to work with material and get the
Hmm.
finish that I want so I can take those lessons I've learned. And because I mean, I think anybody in this community, the end goal is to make a really cool knife. And so that's my next thing, I hope. And the thing is, there's so many awesome blades out there,
Yep.
and so it's not like I'm gonna make the end all be all, but just hopefully make something that suits my design aesthetic and is really nice and is unique too, because there's so many knives. I don't want to just throw another design out there that doesn't add anything,
Yeah.
So I want it to be something that has something to say or something that maybe hasn't been said. And that's,
Yeah.
maybe maybe I'm crazy for even thinking that. Because I mean, as you know, if I spent 45 minutes on Blade HQ or DLT or Knives Plus or River's Edge, I could spend $10,000 on awesome knives. There's just
Yeah.
so many cool ones out there.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping to be one of the cool ones. Hopefully that's that's my goal
Well,
anyway.
and that was one of my next questions is, obviously you've got the clips, you've got the prize, you've got really cool merch. I like your patches and your hats and all that stuff. And I've seen you kind of make these limited run Delica scales. We see them on people's Delicas from time to time. I don't know if you've made any other knife scales, maybe some PM2 scales. I'm not sure. Um, but I always wonder if a knife is on the horizon, and I think the same thing that I think most people that are fans of yours would think is that it's going to be a knife that's got those design elements that it's just going to fit into the lineup. And so I'm excited to hear that that's something that's going on. Is that one of those I work on it when I get a chance, or I mean, is that taking priority, or what's going on with making a folder? Gearing Up is sponsored by Novel Carry. If you're not familiar with them, their goal is to filter out all the noise and help you focus on getting quality gear at fair prices from really talented makers. Whether you're looking for knives, leather goods, pocket tools, beads, or anything EDC related, they've got you covered. Trust me. I've been a customer of Novel Carry in the past. I'm a huge fan of what these guys are doing, and they mean it when they say that this is EDC for the community, EDC by the community, the makers marketplace. These guys are crushing it. Be sure to go check them out. In fact, they've always got a monthly giveaway going on. Head over to novelcarry.com and enter into their monthly giveaway for a chance to win some awesome gear to step up your EDC. Again, that's novelcarry.com.
It's probably kinda when I get a chance. So my what I really wanna do is make a folder with no visible hardware. So
Ooh,
sort of like a traditional knife or something, but where the hardware is all hidden, and I'm still trying to figure out how to do that.
yeah,
Um, so I have actually a design in my head what the knife's gonna look like, but how do you hide the hardware, hide
yeah.
the pivot screw, the body screws, all that stuff. And that could be a terrible idea. I don't know if anybody would even find that appealing, but to me, just because I love that really clean,
Yeah,
simple, I don't know, maybe Japanese look, I guess. Japanese style really appeals to me, which is I think why I like Spyderco's so much.
right.
So yeah, it's kind of taking that idea of a really clean design and figuring out how do you do that. That I
Well, and
mean,
it's
yeah,
that's interesting to me because you so I had a conversation, and I believe that episode, by the time you guys are hearing this, that episode's already aired. I had a conversation with Vero Engineering. I don't know if you've seen Vero's stuff and Joseph Vero and what he's working on.
yeah. Mhm.
But he's got that really interesting designed flipper. And when we were talking about it, he was like, I had this idea in my head, and he's, obviously got an engineering background, and that sort of his design language. And he was like, I just don't understand why nobody's done this before, so I did it. And I, obviously went through the trial and error of making it work. And it's interesting knowing that you've got this artistic background and you're thinking kind of in the same way of like, obviously I have this goal, I got to work backwards from it and figure out how it works. And so I'm excited to see the evolution, the progression of that design, and eventually see it come to life. That's really cool to me.
Well, thanks, Greg. Hopefully, it's not terrible. My whole design process and creative process is basically problem solving. So
Yeah,
screwing something up or making it wrong or it doesn't work, and then trying to figure out how to fix that problem.
yeah,
And it was the same with painting. You hear about painters who put the paint on the canvas, they see it in their mind, and they put it on canvas. But for me, it was I put the paint on canvas and there's all these design problems. And so how do you fix those problems? So it was
yeah,
a matter of progression. It's not great. I'm going to do this and hopefully that makes it better. And the same with all the parts. And
yeah,
the thing too is in my opinion, all of the parts have flaws anyway. So it's never like you reach a finished perfect product. There's always things
yeah,
that could be improved, durability or design or
yeah.
aesthetic or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as and you okay, so case in point, look at your pry bars, right? I mean, you've got the V2 and a V2.5. I mean, I feel like there have been different iterations of each pry bar with little tweaks here and there. I mean, is that sort of echoing that same idea where, you saw something that needed a little tweak and you tweaked it, or where did that come from?
Yeah, I think it's that, and it's also just that part of me that loves design, so always trying to make something more fun or more unique or different. Sometimes I just want to make something a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's probably that more than anything else. But then I have parts from 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, and I'll look at them. I'll think, "Oh my word, I was sending these out. This is so bad." And I'm sure that 3 or 4 years from now, I'll look at the parts I'm sending out now and feel the same way. Be like,
What
"Oh my
was I
word,
thinking?
these are terrible. What am I doing?" So it's a kind of that. Part of it is I'm a pessimist, and so just always thinking. Yeah, I was telling a friend last night. Every time an order comes in, the first thought in my head is, "That is so awesome. I'm so appreciative, and that's probably the last one I'm ever going to get." So, when that's kind of your mindset, you almost have this. It's like this fear, and so you have to continually try to progress or refine what you're
Yeah.
doing because there's this fear in your heart, like, this stuff isn't that good. I got to make it better so people will keep
Yeah.
coming back. Which I don't know. That's probably pretty unhealthy, but that's honest
No,
place.
I feel like that's pretty common, in terms of people that are driven, right? I can go back to old podcasts and I'm just like, what? Like I got some new intro music
Yeah, it's great.
for this. Well, so I have new intro music
Oh, you have new. Okay.
for this
Awesome.
season. Yeah. And I was going back today actually, earlier this morning, and I was listening and I was like, what? I use that as an intro, and again, it wasn't even music that I made, but I'm like, just some of the choices I made. I'm like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Um, and so no, I think that that's normal. I think as you grow and you learn and you mature and your designs mature and they grow and they sort of take on a personality of their own. They obviously you're going to look back and think, man, those differences. At the time that was great, but now I'm glad it is where it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I want to shift gears a little bit from the design to sort of the business. And I think I've asked you this before. I'm going to ask you again because I can't remember, and it may have changed since last time I asked you. When it comes to the business, who who works with you for you? Is it just you? Is it how many people are on the crew?
Mhm.
If it's more than you, what's that like?
So in the shop right now, so my guy Caden is here, who's awesome, and he does a lot of the finish work for me, and helps with a lot of the day to day
Mm-hmm.
processing of parts. My daughter actually helps me. She just turned 18. She does a lot of the packaging and shipping and
Uh
helps
huh.
with that. Because up until very recently, I was doing. If you got a box in the mail, it was me who put it together, and I
Right.
still do quite a bit. But Caden and Daisy have been great, and then I have a couple machinists, and
Yeah.
so it's a real team type thing, and that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of cliche to say, but yeah,
Sure.
so it's everybody kind of having their own area of expertise,
Mhm.
and then um, using those skills and putting a lot of energy and passion into it. That Chris Chris is a machinist, and it makes a really big difference when guys actually or gals, Daisy, actually really care about what people are going to think when they get this thing in the mail.
Yeah.
If they're going to think that was money well spent, or if they're going to think, oh, I probably should have used that to go buy groceries.
Yeah, so, and on that note, one of the things that I love, is your packaging experience, right? Um, can you talk a little bit about the inspiration behind that or the motivation behind I mean, is it yeah, I know you kinda just said, like, hey, when people get it, you want them to have this impression right out of the gate, but, like, what was your inspiration behind the intricate, super high quality doodles on every little card and handwritten, like what pushed you to do that?
Well, I'd say that's the part that I geek out on the most, actually.
Mhm.
Even more than the parts, I love the packaging,
Mhm.
and part of that's my love for art and design and going to art school and that kind of thing. But part of it is I wish I could remember what it was, but I'd ordered a part from a maker a number of years ago, really before I started shipping stuff out, and
Mhm.
it came in a Ziploc baggie. It was
Mhm.
in just a bubble mailer in a Ziploc baggie, and I just
Mhm.
remember being really disappointed. The part itself was awesome, but
Yeah.
for me, the experience of the part, or the experience of getting that thing in the mail that you've been waiting for, you've
Mhm.
searched online and looked at all the different options and all the different makers, and you finally find the guy, "Oh, I like that. I'm gonna spend $60 or whatever it was on that." And then you have this anticipation, you're waiting, you check the mail every day, and finally the package arrives, and you open it up and you have it in your head that the sky is going to open up and this shaft of light is going to, and you're going to hear, this choir of angels as you open this package up, and then it's a Ziploc baggie. And even though the part is cool,
It's sort of underwhelming, right?
yeah, it's a disappointing experience, and so, maybe I'm weird in that way. Obviously, there's a million unboxing videos of pretty much anything you can buy that
Yeah.
demonstrate that people really like that stuff. There's a lot of people that don't care, and it costs so much money for all this packaging, and there's a ton of time involved in putting each one together for the pry bar specifically. But,
Mhm.
you know, and I'll have people say, what are you doing? That is such a waste of time and money. You could just put it in a regular box."
Mhm.
And they're probably right. But for me, I just like to picture some guy getting this thing in the mail and being like, "Wow, that's way cooler than I thought it was gonna be." And
Mm.
that's really kind of the motivation is I want people when they get the thing in the mail
Mhm.
to think, "Oh, this is cooler than I thought it was gonna be." And not
Well,
think,
and it's an experience, right? I mean, it's
"Yeah,
so much more than just getting the end product in hand. It's that unboxing experience, and those
yeah,
little
yeah,
touches go
mm,
such a long way.
yeah." It's funny, it's less so now, I think, because I've been sending them out long enough where people kind of know what they're gonna get. But when I first started sending the parts out, I got at least as many emails about the packaging as I did about the parts. So I'd maybe get emails where people say the part's cool or whatever, but at least as many, and I think more people that would email about that packaging was really cool and I loved it, and so that just validated for me like, okay, this is what people want. They want the part, but they want the experience because people are spending some serious money on stuff, even for a clip, 20 bucks. You could buy a gas station knife for 20 bucks.
Yeah.
So for them to buy a clip for 20 bucks, that's not a small thing. And so I just, by putting that, trying to make the packaging as nice as I can and a sticker or whatever, I'm trying to express through that to the buyer, I really appreciate you spending this money because I, of all people, understand 20 bucks is not it's not something that you can just throw around for a lot of people. I've been there
Yeah.
myself, you know, having 20 bucks for something that you don't really need. I mean, the honest reality is you don't need one of these clips. Hopefully it makes the
Shh! Don't
experience a
tell
little
anybody.
better, a little
Shh.
more fun.
Shh.
Yeah, I shouldn't say that, but I mean, that's the truth. The clip that
Yeah.
comes out of PM2 is phenomenal. They're beautifully done and beautifully made, and they work great. And so when you buy a clip for your PM2 that's going to replace one that's awesome, I wanted that packaging to express to the buyer, man, I really appreciate you taking a part of your paycheck and sending it my way for this thing because it's a really big deal. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing without guys who are willing to part with $20 or $30, whatever it is, on one of these things. So
Yeah.
it's kind of an expression of my design ethic and also just an appreciation for people who are supporting what I'm doing.
Yeah, and as someone that I feel like I've gotten to know you a little bit, um, I see it and I see your gratitude, and you've always just been such a kind person, and I think that reflects a lot, going back to what you said in the beginning about, these people that have all this experience helping you out, and just kind of passing that kindness on, and so it's awesome to see that. Um and again, I one of the things that's sort of common among the makers and brands that I talk to is this gratitude for the community, because without the community you don't exist, right? And so
Yeah.
having that gratitude built into something as simple as packaging is huge. And so I again, hats off to you on it. It's fantastic. Don't ever change it. Just and see, and that's the thing. Now you've set the bar, so like you can't ever do anything different, right? It's got to be this incredible, insane experience every single time.
Well, yeah, and I'll get a package from another maker, look at stuff online, and there's guys that are doing such cool stuff, and so that's a motivation too. you know, this guy, his packaging is awesome, and so
Yeah.
that inspires me to make something that hopefully is close to as good as what he's doing or whatever. And then another guy who works for me who helps me a lot with the social media stuff, Thomas, he kind of is pointing me in the right direction on stuff too. Here's what these guys are doing. Here's what people seem to be liking, and so that
Yeah.
feedback from the community helps a ton, and that's influenced a lot of designs, a lot of the packaging, just
Mhm.
people taking time to shoot me a quick email or reach out because people are busy, and so anytime
Yeah.
somebody shoots an email saying, "Hey, have you thought about this?" or "I like this, but I didn't like this," it means a lot. It really does.
Yeah. Man, that's, again, you think of something as simple as packaging, but explanation just makes so much sense. I do want to shift gears just a little bit, and I wanted to talk to you about collaborations. So one of the things that I see a lot in the community, there's a lot of maker on maker, like working together.
Yeah.
Um, have you ever done any collaborations? Do you ever see yourself doing any collaborations, whether it's design or work or finishing or what? Has that ever been something on your radar?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I've worked with Thomas Pugh at Iron Bull. We've done a couple things together,
Yeah,
and
is it the Pacific Pry? Is that what it is?
yeah, yep, yep.
Okay,
So,
yeah, absolutely. That makes
yep,
sense.
and so and that was really fun. He's an awesome guy, and it was really fun to work with them. I've done a few thing. I have a tweak on the Pry that Urban EDC is going to have here in a few weeks, and it's just more of a aesthetic design thing that they had suggested, and I thought was
Mhm.
cool. So that's fun. You know, actually, I would love to do more of that. I'm not a great guy to reach out because just the way my mind works, my first thought is this person wouldn't be interested or they wouldn't want to hear from me. So I'm really hesitant to reach out to other makers that I like.
Right.
But I would love to do more of that kind of stuff with other people in the community because there's so many people that I really respect and admire, and it'd be a blast to do. I just I'm always loath to I don't wanna waste anybody's time or,
Sure.
have them have to say no. So I probably should be more proactive on that, but
When I reach out to people, I always try to give them that easy out where I'm like, "Hey,
yeah, right,
do you wanna come
right,
chat on the pod? It's okay if you don't. I understand that may not be your thing." So, no. Listen, I
right.
can relate to that for sure.
Yeah,
It makes total sense to hear from that perspective.
yeah.
But that's cool. Listen, I'd love to see Lynch inspired designs from some of my other favorite products in the community, or Lynch integrations or collaborations. That's so, you have my encouragement if that means anything.
Yeah, yeah,
But
thanks. Yeah.
yeah, so we're running towards the bottom of my list of notes and all the things that I kind of wanted to chat about. But one of the things that always I won't want to say inspires me, but I'm always interested in, and you've mentioned it a few times. You talk about, you want to find a way to make something, and you fail at it, and you learn from it, and you try it again. Um, from the sort of inception of the business to now, are there any huge regrets or upsets that stick out that you want to share?
Oh, man. This could be its own separate podcast, but, yeah,
Regrets with Casey Lynch.
yeah, exactly. That's pretty much, where my mind's at all the time is just spending too much time thinking about mistakes and regrets and stuff, but I would say, um, it really bums me out when I know that people want something and are kind enough to be willing to spend their money on it, and I don't have what they'd like, and so they wait, and then sometimes the wait turns into just too long,
Hmm.
and you can't expect people to wait forever, and so that's been and I've seen people get upset because they want something and I just don't have them available, and they're frustrated, so that's really hard for me because I
Hmm.
just don't like it when people are, unhappy about that stuff, and understandably so. I mean,
Sure.
when people get irritated about that, I get it, and so that's been tough. It's been tough too. There's a few dealers that have been really, really gracious and kind enough to carry my stuff, and
Mhm.
Haven't been able to get them quantities that they would like to have. Because if you get 10 of something, like, who cares? That all that does is gonna make your customer base mad,
Right.
and that's been tough. Just I'm a really slow mover, and I'm really cautious, and, that stems a lot from fear, I think, but just not scaling up as quick as I probably should have,
Yeah. No,
for
I mean,
sure.
that makes total sense. I think, I think you, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think, prioritizing, obviously you have a family, you've got priorities, so those a lot of times take precedent. And, um, again, I reference, as you guys listen to this season, you'll hear this, but I reference an interview I did with, Chris Daigle, of Daigle Knives here in Houston.
Mhm.
And Chris sort of introduced me to a perspective that, hindsight, like, duh, what was I think? How could I not assume this? But,
Right.
Chris talked about not keeping a traditional book, and not taking orders, because he doesn't want to get locked into making the same knife over and over again. And so
Mm. Mhm.
this idea of really just keeping it about the love of the design and the love of interacting with the community, and all of that, I think it, for you, it probably makes it easier to continue loving it and continue, pouring a lot of blood, sweat, tears, all that stuff into it, um, at the scale you're at. So, again, I don't want to speak for you, but that's just my take on it.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Yeah, it's such a hard thing to know where the right balance is there,
Hmm.
and I think no matter, I'm sure you have that same tension in your own life. You know, I need to devote time to my kids and my wife, and by the way, a belated happy birthday to April. But you just don't know where that balance is, and so you end up making tons of mistakes because
Hmm.
you are on the wrong side of that pivot point, and so those mistakes lead to other mistakes. It's a ripple effect, and that's it's just life, unfortunately. So y- trying to make the right decisions in the wake of those mistakes,
Yeah.
trying to figure out where you should be, knowing that you're not where you should be. I don't even
Yeah.
know if that makes any sense, but it's kind
No,
of
I'm with
just
you.
living in that tension almost.
And join us next week for more life lessons from
That's
Casey.
right, that's right. We're getting deep here, buddy. Yeah.
Listen, hey, that's product of the show. Sometimes we stay on topic, sometimes we veer off course, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, Casey, this has been a good almost an hour here. Uh, I close out all of these, or most of these. I'm trying to think back if I've forgotten anyone. But I want to know whether it's everyday carry related, your business related, or even outside of those realms. What are you excited about?
Boy, that's a great question.
It's a broad question, I know.
That is a broad question. That's a really broad question. I think I mentioned that I'm a pessimist by nature, and
Hmm.
so a real struggle for me is being letting myself be excited about things because I don't
Hmm.
wanna be disappointed.
Sure,
And
that's
that's such
fair.
a bad place to live in. It's not it's not healthy. It's not you know, I'm a Christ follower, and so that is not how we're commanded to live.
Right,
If that's your ethic, and that's my ethic, that we're commanded to have hope and, uh, and and trust that whatever struggles you're going through, it's not forever.
right.
But getting back to your question, let me think here. I'm actually one of my loves is dirt biking. That's something that kind of clears my mind, and I have a lot of good friends I do that with. So it's a community thing for me and a fellowship thing for me. So I'm
Yeah.
actually going to be making some motorcycle parts here pretty soon. So that I'm
Oh,
excited about that.
nice.
Yeah, just kind of diversifying a little bit. I mean, EDC is my thing,
Yeah.
but just having something a little bit different to kind of maybe shake things up and get my mind to a place where maybe can have some fresher ideas and fresher designs for EDC and things like that. But I don't know, I guess really just my kids are growing up, and so I'm excited to see the directions they're going to go,
Yeah.
and young men and women they're going to turn into. And I'm really, really curious to see what direction our country's going to go in. I have
Yeah.
no idea, and we're so divided right now with
Mhm.
what's going on, and so I'm trying to have hope that we can find some common ground, and people can love each other through their
Yeah.
differences, and hopefully we can get past this really hard place we're in. And
Yeah.
I don't want to
Absolutely.
get too deep again. I think everybody feels the same way about that. I think everybody's mind and heart is there. Just
Yeah.
can we can I have a conversation with somebody who doesn't agree with me, and we can still be friends? It just
Yeah.
doesn't seem like that's
Yeah,
possible
it's
right now.
tough, man. It
Yeah.
that's a big concern now. And I think yeah, you're absolutely right though. I think most people are there. We may not all be saying it, but I think a lot of people are ready for that where that ability to disagree, work together, talk, the things that we learn about when we're kids that conflict resolution 101, but it doesn't seem to be happening a whole lot now. So, yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and the funny thing is about that, I have a lot of friends who are in complete opposition or on the opposite side of what I believe in. They believe X, I believe Z. But since we have a personal relationship, they know that I love them and vice versa. And so we're okay with,
Yeah.
and that's the real issue, I think, is in social media, everybody's anonymous. And so people just, it's human nature to get nasty and to get dogmatic and to get
And defensive and yeah.
defensive. And so stuff just escalates. And then if you start paying attention to that, you just almost are in this hopeless place. Like, man, we just hate each other. People,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's the thing. If you look at your personal relationships and people that you love and they're on the opposite side of the aisle, you can still be friends with them. You can
Yeah.
still have a conversation with them. You can disagree about really, really important things, but still, at the end of the day, we're both human beings, and
Yeah.
their point of view might be different than mine, but it doesn't mean that we have to despise each other. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm going on a rant now, but
No, you're
it,
good.
it's hard to that's why I stay off social media. Just it's so hard to see all the angst and the
Mhm.
fear and the hate, and it's just such a bummer.
Yeah, the negativity is really loud, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Casey, it has been an absolute pleasure. This has been uh, amazing for me. Like I said, I think I said before, I love just getting to pick brains and chat, and this is what's fun for me. So I can't thank you enough for taking out some time, chatting, giving me all the perspective and insight and all that stuff, and opening up about your products, your design, and all that stuff. So a huge thank you for that.
But thanks, Greg, for being willing to have me on. I There's so many other people that would love to be on your show, so it's a real honor for me to be able to share some time with you. So I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. Hey, if you're still listening by this point, I hope you are. Be sure to go follow Casey on social media. Send him some love. Tell him, hey, I just listened to your show on or your episode on gearing up, and I loved this or that or whatever. Um, and make sure that you support him in any way you can, whether it's a share, a follow, a like, jump on his website, grab a hat, a shirt, a pry bar, a clip, whatever the case. But if you're on Instagram, it's just Lynch NW, LYNCHNW. Give him a follow, and like I said, tell him you heard the episode and you love what he's doing. Be sure to subscribe to Gearing Up wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us. If you can't, shoot me a message, Gearing Up Podcast on Instagram or GT Dunn on Instagram, either one, and I'll get it put up. But I think I've checked all the right boxes so far. Thank you guys again so much for listening. Thank you for the continued support, and we will talk to you in the next episode. Casey, have a good one. Thank you so much. We'll talk later. Bye bye.
Thanks, Greg. Hopefully this wasn't terrible.
No, it was great. Thanks, everyone. Peace.